All right. Welcome to our after school special for autism spectrum disorders. Thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited to be here. We also have a special guest with us today, Nicole O'Gale, who is our division psychologist. You've probably seen her in your schools a little bit if you have had a student who has had a division level C or psychoeducational assessment, or if you've seen her around for a consult of some kind. She is an expert with autism spectrum disorder. She is who I go to for all of my questions, and so I'm very grateful that she was able to be here on slightly short notice. So we will get started today. We will get started right away here. So I just want to give you a little info about this after school specials feature that we are delivering this year. So the point of it is that it is really bite-sized professional development for all CESD employees. These sessions are all recorded so that anyone who misses this, if this time doesn't work for anyone, they can still see it, or even later on, people can record or can view these sessions as well. I think a really key part of this is that there will be some collaborative support in our question and answer, and it'll be very responsive to what you guys ask. So if I find that we're getting a lot of questions about a certain topic, then I will tailor the next one to make sure that we're addressing that and giving more information. So speak up, send emails afterwards about what you're looking for out of these sessions. That would be incredibly helpful for us so that we know we're getting exactly what you guys want. And then another really cool thing is that we are going to try to have a few guest speakers like we are today with Nicole coming in, but we're going to try to have even more throughout our 8 sessions this year. So, Nicole, take it away.
Okay, so I've been tasked with kind of sharing a little bit of groundwork here. We'll lay it out for what autism is. And I've kind of grouped it into 2 categories. We'll go with social skills as our first category, and then inflexibility will be our second. And just to have some basic information on what we're looking at when we're having a student with autism so that we can program for them. When we're thinking of social skills that they might struggle with, there's a bunch of different areas, and I've categorized them into 4 loose categories here that we can look at. Our first 2, kind of these green and yellow areas, are everything to do with back and forth communication. So if we see our first area is more the physical act of communication. Can you have a conversation back and forth, which means not just talking about Lego one way, but also listening, asking questions back and forth. Being able to also understand emotions in a back and forth way. When I say something, it affects other people. It affects how they feel. If I say something and someone feels a certain way, can I pick up on that and respond appropriately to that? So that sort of communication as well, which comes into our yellow category of nonverbal communication. They fit very well together. If we have someone who struggles with conversation, back and forth communication, nonverbals are often included in there. See, I am using hands to gesture, maybe to emphasize something. If we were in person, I would be using eye contact. I might gesture with my hands to point out something. And this is all coordinated together, facial expressions, all of these nonverbals to help with this back and forth communication that we have. So students with autism might struggle not only to do that themselves, but to understand that from other people as well and pick up on that. And so often they might have an inappropriate response, or they may not know what to say. They'll monopolize the conversation, or they won't respond at all. So that's something in our basic social skills that we look for and work on. And then our other 2 categories here are more about appropriate behavior, getting along with other people. Play skills are kind of with our early kiddos, something that we look at. Can we have appropriate socialization skills to share, to comfort other people when they're upset? Do we know when to do that, how to do that? Being able to join groups, be collaborative with other people, and have good, positive social behavior with others. My examples here, kind of controlling play, wanting your way, not being collaborative with other people, that would be inappropriate social behavior. So it's not just engaging in that, but being able to read the social situation. Do I understand when I can act certain ways, when I can be sarcastic, how do I respond to sarcasm? Understanding social behavior that way, which really influences our last category of making friendships and relationships that last. Some students make friendships really easily, but they don't maintain them. So there's 2 levels to that. And there's a whole bunch of little skills that go into keeping friendships and relationships. A lot of these skills that we talked about for sure. And just really knowing what a friendship is, how to participate in that, what to expect from other people. And then again, reciprocal, what do I do myself to fit in relationships and have them be positive overall? So that's a general overview of the social skills that we look at. And there's so many skills in there that we really look to support. But just to get some baseline information about how complex the social skills that we are looking to support in autism really are overall. The next category we have, I've labeled flexibility. It's restricted patterns of interest, behavior, activities, a whole bunch of different things. Generally, it's kind of like flexibility. So if we look at or think of flexibility in terms of our 4 categories this way, this is our other side of autism, where we might be inflexible with our first category here, the objects we use, play. Some lined up bears there. Everyone knows about that one for autism usually. Repetitive speech is another one, inflexible speech, repeating things, our echolalia, those kind of behaviors, repeating phrases that they hear on YouTube all the time that aren't necessarily appropriate or put in conversation appropriately, kind of like a catchphrase. We see that as well. Inflexibility going into our routine. This is our typical kids who have larger behaviors, louder behaviors. We see a lot of inflexibility in their routine overall and how they respond to changes in their environment. So they might be really upset if there's a change to their schedule, routine, how they typically do things. They might have a certain way, preference that they want to do, and then a small tweak to that could cause some big behaviors that we see. We might see a lot of anxiety in this category as well, not just behavior that comes with change, but I don't really know about this. I need to ask a lot of questions. I'm really nervous about something that I'm not sure about, that I don't know a lot about. And so we might see withdrawal as well, or a lot of anxiety. When we get into inflexibility of interests, another common one that people know about, really intense interests in certain things, less flexibility in the range of interests that we have. You might really love Minecraft. I know everything about Minecraft because I do so many autism assessments, reading, Lego, all of those things. They could be really intense interests, and they don't have to be odd. They could just be something that we focus on for a long period of time rather than having a wide range of activities. Sensory, kind of our last one, just more inflexible in the way that we experience sensory information. You might really need a lot of it or really avoid a lot of it. And so that's a big one in the classroom, I find, because it's something that we can support quite a bit, but there's so many sensory experiences that we don't always consider all the time because they're not part of our main ones that we learn about. So we could think about temperature, body position, along with our sight, smell, touch, taste, texture, all of that. There's so many. And that is just, again, part of the flexibility. Can we adapt to the situation, different sensory needs? Can we regulate ourselves through that and still go on with our lives? Or does it cause some big feelings for us when it's not going the way that we planned? So that's generally quick version of what autism is. I think that is kind of our baseline there. Tanis, if you want to continue, I'm going to stick around throughout, but if there's any questions on that, let me know. Otherwise, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. When I was planning this, I thought, you know what? I am not a psychologist, and our psychologist would be a much better resource to talk about the actual diagnostic considerations and what goes into the diagnosis of autism and the characteristics of that, right? And just like with everything else, each person with autism is different from the next, right? The diagnosis does not give you the personality or the interests, the skills, the needs. It doesn't give you very much information at all about that individual person. But it does tell you a group of characteristics that that people with autism that they have, right? So it can label them for the purpose of giving more understanding to the challenges that they may have, right? But Stephen Shore, this is a quote from Stephen Shore. He said, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Everyone is different and has unique interests, needs, and strengths. So we must program appropriately, right? So what we are here for today is to gain I'm going to give you one thing to think about today as a strategy based in autism, right? So if we look at why are we doing this, right? With the principles of inclusive education, this is straight from our Alberta government. There's 6 pillars that they have placed significant stress on. So anticipating, valuing, and supporting diversity and learning differences, setting high expectations for all learners, understand learners' strengths and needs, and remove barriers within learning environments, build capacity, and collaborate for success. Now, in Chinook's Edge, we always take whatever the Alberta government gives us and we build upon it, and we make it appropriate and more suited to our context while always taking the essence of it, right? So what we have done, so in addition to the principles of inclusive education, in Chinook's Edge, we have what we like to call the 5 vital actions for inclusion. And we've defined these as building an inclusive mindset, developing specialized knowledge and skills, providing specialized student programming, and using data-driven interventions and strategies, and participating in collaborative processes. So this is where we have identified our key aspects for inclusion and inclusive programming to be successful in our schools. So today, we are really going to zone in on 2 from each of those. Now we are, the strategy that we're looking at looks at all 6 and all 5 vital actions, but these are what really is highlighted. So we're going to remove barriers within learning environments, and we are anticipating, valuing, and supporting diversity and learner differences. We are developing specialized knowledge and skills, and we're using data-driven interventions and strategies, okay? Another thing to think about is that this strategy or this idea that we're going to talk about works for every single kid, okay? So many of the strategies that work for students with autism will work for all of your other kids who might be having a hard time on that day, that week, or they are struggling in school in general. So thinking about their programming from this lens will help all your kids. So today we're going to look at the classroom environment. So when we look at the picture on the left, I know that when I see that, I am overstimulated. I see a messy classroom. I see a lot of things hanging from the roof. I see a lot of visuals on the wall. I see papers on desks. I see desks out of line. And I know that if I were a student who was had some sensory or overwhelm or was walking into that classroom, I think I would turn around and leave Or I would show some behaviors to tell my adults or my people that I'm not okay and I don't want to be in this classroom. Or I cannot learn in this classroom, right? So our goal as educators is to teach students skills, both academic, social, physical, life skills. And there are many students who would not be able to learn in that environment because it is so overstimulating, right? If we look at the photo on the right, and I really tried hard to find just an average looking classroom that had some good strategies. I didn't want to find a sterilized, Pinterest perfect classroom that had all wood toys and there was nothing out of place, because that's not realistic. But this classroom has some fun in it because the teacher obviously has put a lot of work into making sure that her classroom is welcoming, but it is not overstimulating. She has considered lighting. She has considered where she wants her students to be looking when she's giving instructions. So we're going to look closer at each of these. Looking at this one again, I have no idea where to look first. I also do not know what to do when I walk in. So even if I can, even if in that moment I have lots of emotional regulation in my tank, I'm going to walk in there and that's going to drain pretty quickly because I'm not sure what to do or where to go. And as the adult, I'm not sure. It's not clear what I want the student to pay attention to when they walk into a room, right? If we look at this one again, this teacher has placed purposeful visuals on the wall, right? I'm pretty sure that this is an elementary classroom just based on the visuals that we've got underneath the board. It looks like the visuals that are at eye level, she's probably referring to often when they're doing carpet time. She has defined spaces in the classroom. Each student has space at their desk. It looks like she's got a defined space for carpet time. She has space on the left-hand side of the picture there. You can tell that she's got some storage there. She's got some storage bins down there so that things are easily accessible and easy to find. And it looks like she has anticipated some light sensitivities in her classroom. So she has placed some filters over those harsh fluorescent lights, and she has a curtain over top of the window. So either she is just anticipating this for her students at the beginning of the year, or she's responding to students that are in her room. Either way, this teacher is doing a great job. And this classroom looks very inviting and very calm. It also looks like that teacher has a plan, right? It looks like that teacher is organized, and that can also be quite soothing for a student walking in, knowing that their person has a plan for them, right? So we all know that there are environments that we can't change, right? So this is an example of a classroom where we may not be able to change many aspects of this. So in these situations, we need to think about what personal supports does a student need in order to access this space alongside their peers. So in this situation, I thought about some different senses that a student might be influenced by. So sound. Does that student need headphones when they're walking in? Sometimes in a shop, there are lots of loud noises. Do the fluorescent lights bother a student? Maybe a baseball cap would be helpful, a visor, or even sunglasses that student could wear. Maybe they put their hood up. Does smell affect this student? Maybe they need something to sniff if they've got some strong smells in the shop area. Does this area get hot or cold? Maybe a student needs a personal fan or mittens if that's the case, or maybe they need to open the doors when this student is in the classroom. And then seating is always something that you can consider. If the teacher is giving instruction, are they able to sit, or are they able to stand and walk around while they're still listening, right? So if I can't change the environment, how can we support the student so that they can access that? It is all about removing the barriers and giving the supports to ensure our students have access to all of the spaces that their peers do. And visuals. If you walk into a room and you don't know where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to do or how the space is going to be safe, you need some visuals in order to make it that way. And we will talk about visuals in a later session. I just wanted to touch on something else today. So I'll give you three kind of big things to think about as you go back to your schools and you think about classrooms in your schools. So organizing that learning space. Number one, give everything a place, right? So every item has a home, and then that will help both as a teacher and as an educator to keep your space tidy so that the students know where to put things back. So you're not always playing catch up with that, but also the students then know that the space is organized and that there's they know where to find things as well. So there's three pictures here. This was like a tabletop bin for this classroom. And what's really neat about this one is that without using any words or a checklist, the teacher was very clear about how this bin is supposed to look when they are done using it. They put a picture there of what that bin should look like when it is clean. There's no arguing that, right? A student can look at that and look at the actual bin and compare them and fix it if needed. The middle picture here just shows where everything is supposed to go. And I really like that it's pairing visuals with the words. So it's not only a literacy strategy, but it's also keeping the classroom organized. And then this final one, it's pretty tough to see, but this is actually a science lab organizational cupboard. And the visuals on there are like beakers with 200 milliliters, or there's pipettes in there. So I just wanted to ensure that we were covering all of the grade levels here. But keeping things organized is a key piece of independence and ensuring that students know what to do and that your space looks organized. This is a really big one. Then we're going back to that first picture. Avoid visual overload. So one strategy for this is if you have open cupboards in the classroom, you don't necessarily have to spend the money on wood and hinges to go get doors put on them. A really simple strategy is to just put curtains over top. This will eliminate the visual clutter for students, and it keeps things out of sight that maybe you don't need them to be looking at right now, and it's not what you need them to be pulling focus on. And it just keeps things out of sight, out of mind, right? The other thing is keeping the classroom tidy. So having structures in your classroom to ensure that your students can help you to clean up. Part of it is that they know where things go, but part of it is also that you have reminders and prompts and routines so that it happens every day or at the end of every class. Another one, sectioning your space. So this looks very different across all of the different grade levels. So I've got 3 classrooms here, and they've done sectioning in 3 different ways. So the first picture on the left there, that is a kinder classroom. And we've all been in kinder classrooms, and there's lots of different spaces in kinder classes. I know that kindergarten teachers are amazing at organizing classrooms and keeping them looking tidy and with visuals and bins for everything. And this classroom on the left, it has a carpet area. It looks like it has a dress up area. There's spaces where the students would do desk work. They'd also probably eat lunch there, but it looks like it is very organized and the kids know what to expect from each space. We'll go to the one on the right. This was a high school classroom. So you'll notice a few different things. On the floor, we'll go there first, there is a tape line. And that is an excellent strategy for at the end of class when you can say, are your desks straight? Are your desks where they're supposed to be? There is a visual reminder for the students of exactly where the front legs need to be, and there's no question about if they're straight or not. This is great for when the next class walks in and they don't see out of line desks, which really could bother some students. The other piece is you'll see a yellow stripe on the one table and a pink stripe on the next table. That can help with differentiation. It can help with, okay, yellow group, you can go grab beakers first. Pink group, your job is to grab the liquids for our science experiment first, right? So you can identify jobs, you can make groupings, you can ensure that people are able to clean up appropriately. In the middle there, once again, this may be an elementary school elementary classroom. It also could be a library. But what the point here is that each section has a specific role to play. So there is whole group. There's a space for whole group. There's small group stools over here. There's sand tables over here. There's a teacher desk area, and it is separated by what looks like bookshelves. Defining areas in your classroom can really help to define behavior that is expected from that space. And it can help to define where people are supposed to do certain tasks as well. Okay, so here's your reflection. As you go back into your schools, maybe tomorrow morning, I would love for you to look at a space in your building, whether it's your classroom, your library, your office, the gym, wherever you teach or educate students, and think about the comfortable classroom checklist. So this was adapted from a book called You're Gonna Love This, Kid. This is a link, so you can have the link to that, and I did put the link to the slides in the chat, but it takes into account different senses that could be overwhelming a student. So when you notice a student walking into a classroom and their behavior escalates immediately, or after a short period of time, their behavior escalates immediately, it absolutely could be nothing to do with the task assigned to them and everything to do with the environment. So this is a bit of a reflection so that you can look at all of the possibilities of what could be overwhelming that student or what could be overstimulating them in the environment. You can look at these things and see if there's any items on there that can be adapted for the student, whether it is in the physical environment or it is a support that the student has. Yeah. I also wanted to give you some, just to start us off, some books that are excellent resources. The Uniquely Human book, Jackie Rennick, actually, before we started this, she wanted me to ensure that I included this book in here. It's an excellent resource on a mindset shift around autism. It's less about classroom strategies and it's more about mindset. You're Gonna Love This, Kid. This is a book full of strategies. It is easily digestible. It's where I got most of the resources for today from, and it's a really good one. And then Setting Up Classroom Spaces that Support Students with ASD. That's another great one. Unfortunately, that book zones in on more self-contained classrooms or like life skills rooms, but there's lots of tidbits and visuals in there that can be incorporated into the inclusive classroom. So yeah, that's all there for you. And now it is time for questions. I did see one question there. I will post that link back into the chat right away. Okay, it should be in there now. All right. What questions do you have today?
So do you think that like if teachers have things hanging off the roof and there's like too much stuff on the sidelines, then that maybe that's why you're telling us to go back with that checklist just to kind of see?
It's something to consider.
Okay.
Okay, so certainly, because each class is different,
Yes.
right? If you have a group of students in your class that are really sensitive to that or really distracted by it, that might not be the class to have things hanging from the roof with. There might be a different way to display that work.
Okay.
Right? You may have a class that can handle that, and it's fine, right? But if the teacher or anyone is noticing that the students are really distracted by the things hanging from the roof, or the students are saying that it's distracting, it's something to consider that might be something to change.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
The other thing is if you do have things on your walls, I'm not saying remove everything from your walls, but have things up there that are purposeful. Right? If you are looking at them and using them and they're anchor charts for math concepts that you're working on, that is great stuff to have on the wall. But having it really cluttered and busy, it's just noise and it's just overwhelming. And then students don't know where to look to get information that they need. Yeah.
If I can chime in, if we think of up and down regulation as well, and if we think of our visual kiddos who really love that, and they want to look at different spinning things or things moving, and that regulates them really well. If we think about that in terms of sensory, a lot of that visual stimulation might be a lot of up regulation, and we see behavior and more energy, whereas less of that can down regulate if there's not a lot of things going on. So if you have a particularly energetic classroom, that could be something to consider.
Mm-hmm. So maybe if you have a really quiet classroom, you need more stimulation to get them talking and engaged. It all depends on your class. Any other questions or comments or things that you have seen that works really well for you with the whole idea of structuring the classroom environment? How do we regulate one who screams all the time? So with this, I would look at the when and the where, right? So if you have a student who is escalating, there's something that they're having a hard time with, or that screaming serves a purpose for them, and it could be sensory, right? So figure out, I would say, do some tracking on when and where they are being loud and when they are actually allowed to be loud, right? Because if they're seeking that input, then maybe they need it, but there's time and place, right? So we can allow for that. But if they're dysregulated when they are loud, then look at the environment or the supports that you could put in place. What are they having a hard time with? Nicole, anything for that?
Yeah, I like the finding out why is always kind of our first go-to. And something I always consider would be the purpose of it too. Is it something that they need? Do I need that feeling of yelling? Do I need the sound of yelling? Or is it blocking something else out that's happening? Am I yelling because I can't deal with something else? I'm blocking out a sound, something, texture, something else that I hate, and I'm doing this to regulate myself to get rid of something else that's happening in the environment with another student. Is it one of those things? Is it just a byproduct of being dysregulated from something else? It's the work is too hard. It's too loud in here. My clothes don't feel right. I don't have anyone to play with, and I don't know how to express that. So figuring out the why is really important. Really depends on the the functioning of that student, probably, as to why they're doing that or what's happening to cause that sort of reaction all the time.
Lights, diet, or avoidance. Yeah, Margot, you're referring to the yelling. Because it certainly could be if it's the lights that are bugging them and they go in, like Nicole said, there's something that they're wanting to avoid or kind of override, then maybe they're adding that to regulate themselves. Could be diet. We don't have a lot of control over what they eat. That is very much a parent's decision. What they send in their lunch kit and what they eat at home. So we don't have a lot to do with that. And sure, it could be avoidance. And so what is it that they're having a hard time with though, right? And how can we make that task more within their realm of possibility and ability?
And if it is one of those harder kiddos who maybe, I don't know, have fewer verbal skills, they can't necessarily tell you what's happening. For avoidance specifically, we look at what we're avoiding, and like you said, kind of making the task within their capabilities, but also just looking at what we could be doing that replaces that want for screaming. If that is just how they are regulating themselves, that's the best that they can do. It can be distracting to other people, that for sure. What else can we do? That we might try a bunch of different things to replace that behavior with something that's a little bit more positive. We don't want to stop them from doing that if it's regulating them. But is there something else that could meet that same need that we try that would also give them the same sort of regulation? Because yelling can be distracting for a lot of people, for sure.
What about when they hit us out of the blue? This is a tricky one, right? And I'm sorry that that's happening to you, Gina. This is tough. I think that we can still look at the situations in which this is happening, right? Because they could be overstimulated based on the environment or based on the tasks that we're asking them to do. They're probably doing it because they're having a hard time with something, right? So tracking that, figuring out the when and the why, function of that behavior, and then keeping yourself safe as well, right? So is it that if we notice them starting to be dysregulated, or we know that they have a really hard time whenever we walk into the gym for an assembly, we can have a plan in place to support them, right?
Jumping on this one. First of all, we can help with that sometimes. Call
Yes.
student services. Sometimes it's really hard to figure out why, and it takes a lot of digging. We absolutely can help with that, just to, have a better understanding, because it's hard to anticipate sometimes. The one thing I do bring up all the time with autism and responses like this, I think, is kind of, we think of our nonverbal and verbal understanding for kids with autism, whether they have full verbal capabilities themselves or not. The reaction and how they read other people can often mismatch. So we have people who don't show a lot of facial expressions. Again, that back and forth, they don't show it themselves. Maybe they can't read other people's facial expressions. Their responses or emotional reactions to things can be off for the social context. So they might laugh when something's not funny. We get kids that go to funerals and act out and laugh. Maybe they're uncomfortable. Maybe they just don't know how to react, or they're misreading the social environment. And I'm hitting you. This has been a great social interaction that we've had. You've looked at me. You've said something. We're interacting. I don't necessarily know that that's not positive and that I could do it a different way. And so there's this different reaction that we interpret as, well, that's odd. That's not the right reaction. And maybe looks like it's on purpose, or it looks like they're doing it because they like doing it. And again, we think of this mismatch, disconnection with reading that back and forth social emotional skills, being that if I respond a certain way, you respond back to me in a certain way. If I do something, you might think something differently, feel something differently than I do, and appropriately reading that, there can be a disconnect there, which makes it a lot harder to maybe figure out what's happening. Again, let us know. We can always support that. But I find it's understanding that can help, and then trying to figure out what need we're actually trying to meet with that. So is it, I wanted an interaction with you. I don't know how to start something, and I think it's funny when I hit you, and I think this has gone well. Good job. We've interacted. How do I learn to do that appropriately, and doing a lot of positive reinforcement for a different way that you can get my attention rather than hitting? Again, that's just my guess for what it is. It could be something very different. Just as an example, it can be tough to figure that out, but that's just some extra information maybe that might help.
And with this, lots of social stories around appropriate interactions with others and appropriate ways to gain attention. Visuals, of course, and what you've said there, no hitting, hands to self. I love that you paired it with what you're expecting them to do as well. So that verbiage is succinct, it is clear, and it's telling them what you want them to do. It's behavior that you want, right? So lots of social stories, lots of visuals, and maybe make a behavior support plan, kite plan, and do some tracking around what that looks like, right? And so you can talk to administrators about that, or LSTs in your building, and they can connect with coordinators or even psychologists if needed. Or our SET team is really, really strong with that too. So. It is 4:14, so if there are any last minute questions that you have in you that are burning, send them in. If you have any questions for us after this recording, please send an email. You can ask your LST, or you can direct those questions straight to me. And our next, this after school special runs the second Tuesday of every month. And if you have any burning questions that you would like us to focus on in next sessions, please let us know. And we will tailor this to what our division needs. So if there's nothing else that you guys have questions for, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so glad there were so many people here. Thanks for all your questions and your engagement. And we will see you next time.